The Atlanta Braves lost the series to Miami and lost Chris Sale to the injured list. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, June 23rd. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Over on the Substack over the weekend, obviously today's three things, right, breaking down what happened in each game, published after those games are done, and after I do the postcast over on Locked On Sports Atlanta. And this morning, something about Chris Sale. We're going to talk about facing the Mets again this week. We're going to talk about what happened in the series over the weekend. But the biggest news by far, and the news that could potentially end up changing the course of the season, is the news that the Braves have lost Chris Sale to the injured list with what the team is calling a fractured rib cage. The injury happened in that start versus the Mets in the ninth inning. Sale makes the diving play to stop the Juan Soto kind of check swing grounder, makes the throw to first, gets the out, and doesn't finish the inning, but keeps going after that. The story here on the timeline of everything, right, is, and this is from Brian Snitker's comments on Saturday, as told to Gabe Burns of the AJC, is where I'm getting this from. And from Brian Snitker, quote, "He was doing his exercises and everything," that's on Friday, by the way, "and felt like something wasn't right. So they had him looked at, and it showed what it showed," in that case being the fractured ribcage. Quote, "It's a freak thing, unfortunate thing. I saw him after the game that night, and he was doing his post-game workout and everything. I saw him the next day, and I think he felt a little uncomfortable. But then Friday was when we wanted to get it checked out." What Snit is in essence getting across there is he felt fine after the game. And some of that's adrenaline, right? Like, adrenaline's a hell of a drug, okay? Some of that's adrenaline. And then Snit thinks he was a little uncomfortable the next day. And then Friday, they get him checked out. And that's where, I think they had him take an MRI. And that's where they see the fractured left rib cage. The wording of that they don't say it's a fractured rib, it's a fractured rib cage, makes me think that either there's multiple small fractures in the rib cage. That's why they worded it like that. That's what I'm assuming is going on. The thing that's really tough here, and don't let people on social media or in comments and like YouTube or Reddit or whatever get this misconstrued. We do not know how much time Chris Sale is going to miss. We don't. The organization, when they made the announcement, Snit in his press conference, nobody has given a time frame for Chris Sale. And David O'Brien of The Athletic reiterated that when he wrote it up on Saturday. Quote, "The Braves won't have a timeline for Sale's return and will wait until symptoms diminish before estimating when he'll be back." And then David O'Brien goes on to speculate that it likely will be a significant period, given the nature of the injury, perhaps magnified by his age, his slender physique, and the amount of torque that the 6'6" side-arming lefty produces in his delivery. So what we do know is Chris Sale is on the 15-day IL. I do want to, real quick, the fact that he went on the 15-day IL and not the 60 does not mean anything. He can be moved to the 60-day IL later and it does not restart the time until he's eligible to return, placing somebody on the 60-day IL needs a corresponding move. You don't place somebody on the 60-day IL just to do it. Every time you place somebody on the 60-day IL, it creates a 40-man roster spot, and so you need a corresponding move to do it. Matter of fact, as I understand, you can't just put somebody on the 60-day IL without that corresponding move. So if Atlanta does not need to add anybody to the 40-man roster, they just put him on the 15-day IL, and they can move him to the 60 if he is out for 2 months. They can just move him to the 60 later. And again, it does not reset the clock. This is what happened with Michael Harris last year. He was on the 15-day IL with that hamstring strain, and later they moved him to the 60, and then he was activated like 3 weeks later. Because at the time, they waited to move him until they had a corresponding move and needed that roster spot. So if anybody tells you, oh, Sale's only going to miss 2 starts, Sale's going to be back by the All-Star break, like whatever, they don't actually know. No one knows how long Chris Sale is going to be out for. I am personally assuming that this is going to be a month. I don't expect to have Chris Sale back until sometime after the All-Star break. And again, that's just me. I don't know. I don't actually know anything here different from what the team has told us. And it's important to remember that when people say, hey, Sale's only going to miss 2 starts, we don't know that. We don't know if his recovery is going to be different from Sean Murphy's. Murphy missed about a month. Sean Murphy's thing, again, was they didn't word that as a rib cage. I wonder if the rib cage wording is just casual usage or if there is multiple fractures. There's so much we don't know in this situation, and we're not going to know until we get farther along. So again, I would rather assume he's going to be out for a month or more and be pleasantly surprised when he comes back earlier than I'd rather do that than assume Sale's going to be out for 2 weeks and then be disappointed if he doesn't come back until August. But it does absolutely suck. Chris Sale has been one of the better pitchers in baseball in the last month and a half. He had that very rough start to the year. But since the beginning of May, Chris Sale has made 8 starts with an ERA of 1. And he's 4-1. The team's 5-3, but an ERA of 1. 6 earned runs in 54 innings with 68 strikeouts. An ERA of 1. It's absurd. It's, again, over 2 months, 8 starts, an ERA of 1. He's been back to Cy Young form. That is the best ERA in that stretch. And to lose him sucks. Because the way that Atlanta has won, since the start of last season, really, has been by having one of the best rotation ERAs in baseball and doing just enough on offense to win. Okay. Going into Sunday's game, Atlanta had a rotation ERA of 3.58. That was a top 10 mark in baseball this year. That was 9th this year. That exact same ERA was 3rd last year. Shows you what temperatures haven't warmed up a little. Temperatures are just now starting to warm up. The ball carries more in the heat, as well as the dead in baseball, what that's done, right? Atlanta's 358 goes from 3rd best last year to 9th best this year. But that's been what they've done. And Sale has been the biggest part of that. His domination last year, obviously they got good contributions from everybody else, but Sale won the Cy Young last year. That's been the biggest part of this for Atlanta, is having that lockdown starter who can give you 7 innings of 2 runs or less, and you can get just enough out of the offense to win the game. And you have Strider back now, and he looks more like the old Spencer Strider. He's not all the way back, but he looks more like the old Strider, but you subtract Sale. And the repercussions here are really interesting as far as what Atlanta does in the rotation going forward. We know the plan they have now. Let's talk about what they might do going forward as far as, do they acquire somebody? We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Let's go over Atlanta's options in the rotation from now. Because the immediate plan, just the right away, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to roll with Didier Fuentes. Okay. Snit told the media in Miami on Saturday, quote, "We'll go with the 5 guys we have. It's not the first time we've been through this. We lost our best position players, our best pitchers all in the same year. We handled it before and we will again." And that's a reference to losing Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider in the same year. And while the team was not nearly as good, the ceiling was lower, right? They did still make the postseason. So they've done it before. They'll do it again. The fact that's the first place he went is a little bit like they might not think he's back super quickly, but there you go. So plan number 1 is Didier Fuentes stays in the rotation. And the results weren't great on Saturday. Most of those runs came off of a 3-run shot that he gave up early. 4 runs on 6 hits across 5 innings, but the 3-run homer in the 3rd inning was the issue. It was on if I remember right, it was on, I think, a curveball in that he left up a little bit too much. And a little bit of crow here. And people I talked to also fully expected Fuentes to mostly go fastball slider. He did throw the curveball almost as much as the slider, even broke out the split finger for a single pitch. Was a little more well-rounded than I expected. But again, only walked 1, 9 whiffs, 15 called strikes. There are a couple pitches, a couple locations that he wants to have back. But I feel like it was a good start for Didier Fuentes. Like, he did well in this. And the Stuff Plus numbers dropped on Saturday for that. And it is nuts. The fastball was a 128 Stuff Plus. Reminder, 100 is average. If your pitch is a 100, it is a league average pitch. The Stuff Plus was 128 plus on the fastball, 108 on the slider, 114 on the splitter, and 121 on the curveball. It averages out to a 122 Stuff Plus for the game. So 22% better than the average starter. It was, I gotta be honest, I genuinely did not know the stuff was going to grade out that well. And it's not enough to fully stabilize. But Stuff Plus stabilizes very quickly. And if you want to convert this to the 20 to 80 scouting scale to have a better idea of how good this stuff was, 50 is average on the scouting scale, right? The fastball was a 65. The curveball was a 61. So both of those as plus pitches, and the fastball bordering between plus and double plus, with the slider being a 49 and the splitter being a 52. So 2 average pitches, a plus pitch, and a borderline double plus pitch. You see why Didier Fuentes was called up by the Braves, because the stuff is fantastic. And this was a little bit of the issue you saw with Schwellenbach last year, right? The stuff was really good. He had to learn the right ways to use it. And I remember specifically the first couple starts, it felt like he really struggled in the 5th inning because he was facing guys he was hitting that 3rd time through and had to figure out how to get them out. Didier Fuentes legitimately showed a lot of promise, and I understand the idea of leaving him in the rotation and letting him continue to work. They did not send him down. Obviously, they're going to stick with him because of the injury. The fact that they didn't put a thing out on Friday night saying they were sending him down should have been a little bit of an indication something was up with somebody, and we ended up getting that news. And I do think if Atlanta makes a move to replace Chris Sale, some of that is contingent on how long he's out for. But because your options are, if it's a shorter absence, you stick with these 5, and then you can supplement with some of your options in AAA for a spot start here and there. On the 40-man roster, you have Nathan Wiles, who went 7 scoreless last night for Gwinnett, like best start of his career. You have Davis Daniel, and you do have Hurston Waldrop, who looked really good when he changed his mechanics. He's struggling a little bit to get those to stick right now. Probably not the guy they're going to call up. Not on the 40-man, they have Ian Anderson, who is starting weekly. They have Royber Salinas, who's on a rehab assignment. And then they've gotten starts from reliever Zach Thomas, 0-3, 5.52 ERA, probably not him. Jose Suarez, 0-1, 4.24 ERA, maybe, but probably not him. Jackson Stevens, remember him? He made a start on Friday night. 4 innings, no runs, no hits, 9 strikeouts. So you've got options for a spot start out of Gwinnett if this is a shorter absence for Chris Sale. Maybe you call up somebody from AA. Blake Burkhalter, Lucas Braun would be my 2 assumptions there. Maybe you call somebody up. But if they end up making a deal, there's a couple different options, right? I think and I talked about some of this last week, right? Go call the Pirates up, make the deal for David Bednar and Andrew Heaney, get you a veteran in Heaney for a veteran lefty for the rotation, and get you David Bednar for this year and for next year to step in as closer right now and either be a setup man or a closer next year. Maybe they make a deal, something like they call the Orioles, to get Charlie Morton back, right? He was awful to start the year. 0-6, 10.36 ERA in 6 starts. He went to the bullpen. When he came back to the rotation on May 26th, he's made 5 starts. He's 4-0 with a 2.42 ERA, 26 innings, 36 strikeouts, 8 walks. He's been better. Maybe they make a move there. Maybe they call LA, the Angels, not the Dodgers. Perry Manassian, former assistant under Alex Anthopoulos here in Atlanta. Since he took the job in LA after the 2020 season, the Braves and Angels have made 11 different trades. 5 of them since the end of last season. So maybe the Braves go out and try to make a move there, grab a veteran starter if they want, like a Tyler Anderson or something. Maybe if LA falls out of contention, it's a bigger deal and you add a left fielder like Taylor Ward, you add a reliever like closer Kenley Jansen, maybe you go and you pick up a bigger name like Yusei Kikuchi instead of Tyler Anderson or Kyle Hendricks or something. Another option here, which I like the idea of this, is Kyle Gibson. He signed with Baltimore late in spring training and was not good to start the year. 4 starts, 16.78 ERA. They cut him after 4 starts. The Orioles, hurting for pitching, cut him after 4 starts. He signed with Tampa Bay, and he went down to AAA Durham. And he's been very good down there. 17 in the 3rd innings, 22 strikeouts, 6 walks, 1 earned run, 0.52 ERA. He opted out over the weekend. And the way that this works with the CBT, he signed a deal with Baltimore for $5.25 million because he was a veteran and he was on the opening day roster. He's getting paid that money by Baltimore either way. So if Atlanta signs him, it's just a prorated portion of the league minimum, $760,000. Maybe it's a situation where Atlanta goes and they sign Kyle Gibson. Maybe they wait for the Fuentes start from this week and then sign Gibson and use him the next time through. Maybe they make a trade and they add somebody. It all depends, again, on how long Sale is going to be gone for, because we do not know. And anybody telling you they do know is speculating. They're guessing. We don't know. Atlanta specifically did not give out any sort of time frame. They did not give out details as to the severity of the injury. Is it multiple ribs? Is it mostly like intercostal and just a hairline fracture? Like, we don't know the details to know how long he'll be gone for. All we know is they didn't tell us how long, And so, again, I'm going to assume that it's on the longer end and be pleasantly surprised if he comes back earlier. That's just, it feels like for my mental health, that's safer than saying, oh yeah, he's back by the All-Star break and then being disappointed when he's not, right? In just a minute, let's talk about overall thoughts from the weekend series and then what Atlanta has to do this week when they face the Mets again. We'll do that next right here on Braves Today. Atlanta, unfortunately, drops the series to the Marlins 2-1. And this is frustrating from the perspective of you swept the New York Mets, who were leading the division when they came in, and then you lose 2 out of 3 to Miami, who was in 5th place in the division. And I say was, they still are. But I think the difference in these series, there's 2 big things that I can point to that happened in this that are different between the Marlins and the Mets. In the Mets series, one, you had your better pitchers, right? You had Sale, you had Strider, you had Schwellenbach. And you got the walk-off win in game 1, so Strider had a no decision. I'm sorry, Schwellenbach had a no decision. But Sale got the win in game 2, obviously, 8 2/3. And Strider got the win in game 3. And so that's absolutely part of it. You got better starts there than you did from over the weekend. Fuentes took the loss on Friday. Bryce Elder took the loss on Sunday. And your one win was Grant Holmes. And he had the win. So you got what I'm going to call your second tier pitching. And we knew Atlanta was doing this. We knew that was going to be the strategy. They changed the rotation to get the studs against New York. They swept New York. And they left the other part of their rotation up for Miami. And they lost 2 out of 3. But the other reason, I think, and one that anybody who watched these 3 games will obviously understand, is the offense was not really that great in either series, but they got bailed out a lot by New York, and they didn't get bailed out by Miami. So in the Mets series, the Braves hit .229 with a 709 OPS. In the Marlins series, the Braves hit .238. They hit better from a batting average perspective in the Marlins series. Less power production, 644 OPS, only 2 homers. Marcell Ozuna surprisingly did not go off like we all thought he was going to. They had 2 homers in the New York series as well. But the difference here, again, is the Mets in every single game bailed them out by making bad plays. Game 1, base running errors. Pete Alonso getting, not base running errors, but outs on the base paths. Pete Alonso getting thrown out at third. Juan Soto getting doubled up at first base in the 9th inning and then blaming the umpire for him not noticing that Ronald caught the ball or listening to his base coach. Game 2 was the issues from the catcher. We saw the mask thing, touching the ball with the mask, letting the run come in. Another defensive misplay later. I think Alvarez threw to second instead of third. And so Luke Williams was able, or whoever was running, was able to make it to third when he should have been picked off and hung up between the bags. And then game 3, 9 walks. 5 of them came around to score, including 2 runs that scored when they issued a walk with the bases loaded. Like, New York made a bunch of mistakes, and New York beat themselves in that series. Miami, they made a couple mistakes. Every team's going to make mistakes in a three-game series. But they didn't beat themselves like the Mets did. The Mets beat themselves. The Marlins didn't. Atlanta's offense, again, from a batting average perspective, was technically better in the Marlins series than the Mets series. From a power perspective, they were worse. And Atlanta lost 2 out of 3 with the combination of second-tier pitching, as I'm going to call it, and not getting breaks on offense, or not getting breaks from the other team. Now you go back to New York for 4 this week, and you don't have Chris Sale, so you have to go with a mix of those starters. Schwellenbach versus Paul Blackburn in game 1, you absolutely have the advantage there. Paul Blackburn's 0-1 with a 6.92 ERA. Spencer Strider versus Frankie Montas in game 2. Montas is making his season debut, but he has been bad in his rehab starts. Okay? He's allowed multiple runs in every single one of them. He had 2 starts in high A with Brooklyn. He combined in those 2 starts 4 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 4 runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. It's an 8.31 ERA. Now, this was his spring training ramp up, right? Like, you have to remember, this was, in essence, him doing spring training for the first time. His 4 AAA starts, a 13.19 ERA, 14 1/3 innings, 21 runs on 26 hits, including 8 homers, 6 walks to 8 strikeouts. He's been legitimately bad. He got tagged by Scranton Wilkes-Barre for 8 runs on 7 hits in 1 2/3 innings in the 3rd of the 4 rehab starts. His last rehab start against Jacksonville, which is Miami's affiliate, 5 runs on 7 hits in 5 innings. Atlanta absolutely has the pitching advantage in games 1 and 2. Again, Schwellenbach versus Paul Blackburn, Strider versus Frankie Montas. Here's the thing. You really need to win those 2 games. Because game 3, Didier Fuentes, second career start on the road in Citi Field against Clay Holmes, who 7-4, 3.04 ERA. And then game 4 is, I still think Atlanta probably has the advantage here, but it's closer. Grant Holmes versus Griffin Canning. Grant Holmes is 4-6, 3.71 ERA. Canning is 7-3, 3.91 ERA. So Holmes has him by 20 points of ERA. Holmes has exactly 30 more strikeouts than Griffin Canning. I feel like Atlanta has a slight advantage in game 4. You have a huge advantage in games 1 and 2 on the mound. Game 3, you are at a disadvantage. Again, Fuentes graded out really well. It's his second career start in the majors, taking on Clay Holmes, who's been one of the better pitchers for the Mets this year. So, yeah, you're in a situation where the offense has to be better, and that's all there is to it. I said it too much on the postcast last night, and people complained about it, but the offense has to be better, right? When the Mets when you didn't get bailed out over the weekend by the opposing team, you lost 2 out of 3. Now, maybe the Mets will bail you out a little bit. Maybe they'll play better at home. Who knows? But the Braves offense has to be better because now you have to cover for not having Chris Sale. Yes, you have Schwellenbach. Yes, you have Strider. You have the Spencers. And we feel really good about that. But the main strength of your team for the last year and a half of having a Cy Young candidate at the top of your rotation and really good starting behind him is now gone. That advantage is gone. You have Ronald back, and Ronald is absolutely just still raking. It is absurd how well Ronald Acuna Jr. is hitting still, like right now. And all of the numbers, I think I saw among all outfielders with 100 plate appearances, he leads in, his OPS plus is 231, he leads in WRC plus, all of those different things he leads. Again, 27 games, 2.1 WAR for Ronald. He's batting .396 with a .504 on base and a .698 slug. In just about every respect, he's outpacing that 2023 MVP year. And the start of his year is outpacing the start of that 2023 year. So let's see what happens. Let's see what Atlanta can do. Hopefully this is a good 4-game set and Atlanta can at least split, if not win 3 games to 2, so that they're still on pace to be back in the wild card race by the All-Star break. This has been Braves Today for Monday, June 23rd. Do me a favor, if you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. And always, go to bravestoday.com, subscribe, free or paid, helps us out a ton. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.